Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first meeting of the new year, our regularly scheduled meeting for Tuesday, January 6th. Ms. Hilbert, will you please call roll?
Yes, sir. Councilman De La Garza?
I am present.
Councilman Kidder?
Here.
Councilwoman Butler?
Present.
Councilwoman Scott?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Young?
Here.
And Mayor Crocker.
Here. If you would, please rise, join me for the pledges, followed by a moment of silence.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right. Again, welcome, everyone. Happy New Year to all. We will jump right into our tasks for the evenings, and we'll start with announcements and reminders. Mr. Garza, do you have anything for us this evening?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I do have a couple of announcements for you this evening. First, we want to remind the public that all non-emergency city offices will be closed on Monday, January 19th in observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Offices will reopen at 8 a.m. on Tuesday, January 20th. On behalf of the Parks Department, Victoria residents will have a chance to see the state's top amateur athletes compete during the first weekend of the 2026 Texas Amateur Athletic Federation's Winter Games of Texas. Disc golf, cornhole, golf, and swimming will take place at various locations around the city on January 17th and 18th. The second weekend of the TAF Winter Games will be held on February 14th and 15th and will include esports, adaptive basketball, flag football, softball, and tennis. Registration is open for athletes to compete during both weekends, and Victoria residents are welcome to participate. Information about individual competitions, including registration information, is available at victoriatx.gov/tournaments. The city is also seeking volunteers to help with the event setup, athlete support, and game operations during both weekends. Food will be provided, and every volunteer will receive a free t-shirt. Can't say no to a free t-shirt. To sign up, contact Parks and Recreation at 361-485-3200, or they can be reached via email at parks@victoriatx.gov. And finally, on behalf of Environmental Services, we want to remind the public that the deadline to RSVP for the Keep Victoria Beautiful 4th Annual Volunteer Appreciation Event is this Friday, January 9th. Anyone who volunteered with KVB throughout 2025 can RSVP at 361-485-3230 or via email to keepvictoriabeautiful@victoriatx.gov. And those are all the announcements I have for this evening, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on then to public and employee recognitions. I know we have one that we may need to push for a moment. Mr. Garza, do you have any public and employee recognition?
I do have several employee recognitions. Several of these individuals are not here, and so I will begin with the individual that I know for sure is here, and that is Haley Palmieri. She's with our 911 dispatch center, and so if you wouldn't mind standing so everybody can see you. But Haley graduated from our telecommunications operator training program on December 17th and will be assigned to the 2nd platoon at the 911 center. This training program can take some employees up to 12 months to complete, but Haley completed hers in 9 months. And so we're very appreciative of Haley for her hard work and dedication. And as we've been talking in recent meetings, our telecommunication operators, our dispatchers are truly first responders. And so we're very grateful for her service. And so Haley, congratulations, and we're excited to have you on board. In addition, for the fire department, we want to recognize that our training battalion chief, Dana Woodward, recently completed the Fire Service Chief Executive Officer program. This program is delivered by professors from the Texas A&M Mays Business School. It is designed to provide advanced professional development to sharpen leadership skills within the fire service. I don't believe he is here, right? But let's give him a round of applause anyway. Furthermore, for the fire department, they recently conducted several promotions, and so we want to recognize Angelo Stafford, Brent Dunavant, Kevin Mayer, and John Rudd to the rank of fire engineer, and we also promoted Tyler Lakua to the rank of EMS lieutenant, and so congratulations to them all. And that's all I have for this evening.
All right, thank you. I think we have one on the agenda, but I don't know that Russ is here yet. We will circle back to it when we need to. How about that?
And I actually forgot
Uh-oh.
one that was kind of impromptu and was in my notes, but I can't read apparently. But I wanted to also take a moment to just acknowledge all of the personnel that were involved with our New Year's Eve blast-off event. Joe Novosad with our CVB was instrumental in that event. So kudos to him and his staff. I had a chance to go with my son, and it was an amazing event. You may recall that we held the first one just a couple of years ago, and so it's slowly but surely becoming, an expectation now that we have this event on New Year's Eve. And so just kudos to all the staff involved. Again, it was a successful event, and so we can just give everybody involved a round of applause. That'd be really great.
Yes, well done, everyone.
Did that give Russ time to show up?
No, almost.
No.
We will hit the pause button on.
I didn't see you go like this. You know, to take your time.
Fair enough. We'll hit the pause button on recognitions, and we will jump into items from council. Does anybody have anything this evening? Seeing none then, okay. Let's go on to citizens' communication then. Michael Vondera. Good evening, Mr. Vondera.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Michael Vondra. I live at 2107 North Bend, Jordan. I still think the commissioners should pay for that roof, and they're probably spending all that money on the hospital, so I do have a suggestion. They could work it off through sweat equity. We could give them like 5 Rain King uniforms, and they could get on that roof and, have a roofer supervise them and, make them earn their money, because they make about 20 times more than the people on the city council. And I would like to have a law passed, where people can legally ride a bicycle on a sidewalk. The person that got killed recently, he was following all the laws by riding it on the road like he was supposed to, but if he would have been illegally riding his bicycle like I do on the sidewalk, he'd probably still be alive. I wish someone could put stencils on the sidewalk with some paint and say, bicycling on the sidewalk is encouraged, and have a law to make it legal, because people can get off the sidewalk riding bikes, if there's pedestrians or what have you, and it's just too many people are getting killed on bicycles in Victoria, and we don't really need any more surveys and stuff. We already know it's dangerous, and I wish someone could do something, and I wish the city council could put it on the agenda and make a motion to vote on it to where it's legal to ride on a sidewalk. Most people do ride on the sidewalk, but legally a police officer can give you a ticket for riding on the sidewalk, and I just don't think that law is necessary. And I do appreciate the police department for not enforcing it, because sometimes you just have to ride a bike, your car's getting fixed or something, and you just need a safe place. And that place where he was killed is not a safe place to be riding, on the road. It was on 2700 South Laurent, and that's a manslaughter case, so they have to solve it in 2 or 3 years, because there's statute of limitations on manslaughter and stuff. So I do hope the police department can solve it and they find out who did it. I heard it was a flatbed tow truck that hit it, and it was real foggy that day, and I got a video, but it's not that good. Well, anyway, Happy New Year. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Vondera. So the next card I have then is from Jenny Stafford. Good evening, Ms. Stafford. Welcome. Always good to see you.
Good to be here. Thank you for letting me take a little bit of your time. I'm Jenny Stafford with Midcoast Family Services, not the CEO anymore. I'm now the Community Engagement, forgot what I've named myself, coordinator. Brett Jones is the new CEO. He's my boss, which I'm loving. But I'm here to talk to you tonight about homeless services. The U.S. Department of Housing, and before I finish this, I have more than 3 minutes worth of words to say, so I handed you a handout so you would have some bullet points that you could look at later. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD as we know it, has recently released a Notice of Funding Opportunity, or a NOFO, that will realign how homeless services are delivered nationwide. Change at the federal level naturally raises concerns and questions throughout the country, including here. We currently operate 2 HUD-funded housing programs. The first, we call Next Step, is a permanent supportive housing program with 56 rental units for individuals who've experienced chronic homelessness. And chronic homelessness just means they've had long periods of being unhoused, along with a disability that prevents them from being employed and therefore housed. And our second program we call Pathways is a transitional housing project to serve victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking who have become homeless because of their direct result of their victimization. Together, these projects operate on an annual budget of about $1.3 million, which requires us a match of $133,280 every single year. We meet that match through United Way, through our thrift stores, and through our annual fundraiser. When you look at the cost per household, we provide housing and services for about $20,000 per household per year. I don't know about you, but I think that's a pretty good bargain. It covers rent, utilities, insurance, intensive case management, transportation, and we fill in the gaps when there's medical needs or food costs that aren't being met. We feel like that's a bargain compared to hospital stays, repeated emergency room visits, incarceration, or other interactions with the community. We are a member of the Texas Homeless Network and submit quarterly performance scorecards to measure our outcomes. We are also monitored by HUD San Antonio Field Office through regular audits, and I gotta tell you, those are some of the toughest audits I've ever been through. We also complete a single audit, an annual single audit by a local CPA firm, and I'm happy to report we have not had a finding in decades. All of those things together are all used to determine whether or not we get funded year after year. However, under the pending HUD NOFO, both of these programs will be terminated, as will most permanent housing projects across the country. In my 26 years of working in nonprofit leadership, I've learned that we've got to be flexible and we've got to be accountable. We are prepared to do that, but we're also very worried about what's going to be left behind. I believe with my whole heart a statement that was made by Hubert Humphrey back in the 1970s. The moral test of government is how government treats those who are in the dawn of life, the children, those in the twilight of life, our elderly, and those who are in the shadows of life, the sick, the needy, and the handicapped. Stable housing for people who cannot care for themselves is not the problem, but is rather the solution. Thank you, and I apologize for going over on my time.
No, thank you for the information. Appreciate
I'll
it.
keep you posted. They're supposed to reissue I think on Thursday, and we'll know for sure then what's going to happen. But we know we're going to lose our permanent supportive housing.
Well, please keep us informed. Yes, thank you. All right, the final card I have then is Richard Diasis. Did I get that right?
You did.
Very good. Welcome, sir.
Good to see you again. Mr. Mayor, council members, I apologize. I want to start off by saying Happy New Year, and you'll have to forgive me if I don't stay for our entire meeting. It is my better half's birthday, and if I don't make our dinner reservation, I will be the next obituary you read in The Advocate. That being said, if you're watching, happy birthday, honey, I love you. But I felt the need to bring up something that I heard in our last meeting, and it spoke to me, and I felt the need to address it, and it regards this new push on attempting to alter or get rid of books in our public library. And it struck to me something that I really felt that I needed to address, and so you'll have to forgive me, I jotted down some notes on my phone, so if I'm looking down, that's what I'm reading. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I come before you because I believe strongly that banning books is harmful to our community, our students, and the democratic values we say for which we stand. Book bans are not just about removing pages from shelves. They're about limiting voices, ideas, and perspectives. History has shown us that when society begins restricting access to information, it is not protecting its people, it is weakening them. A strong community is built on open discussion, critical thinking, and the freedom to learn, not on fear and censorship. Our libraries and schools serve people of every background. No one single group should decide what everyone else is allowed to read. Parents already have the right to guide what their own children read, as we recently reaffirmed in our state constitution. But banning books takes away the right of all parents and all families. It assumes that adults and young people cannot handle difficult topics, when in fact reading about those topics is often how we learn, grow, and empathize. Books give students a chance to see themselves represented and to understand people who are different from them. Removing these stories tells some kids that their lives don't belong on a shelf. It sends a message that certain identities, histories, or experiences are either inappropriate or unworthy of understanding. That is not a message a healthy community should send. If we truly want our young people to be informed, thoughtful citizens, as we all should hope, we must trust them with knowledge, not shield them from it. Education is not about avoiding challenging ideas. It is about equipping people to navigate them responsibly. So I urge this council to reject any attempt to ban books in our public institutions. Instead, let us focus on supporting parents, strengthening literacy, giving our communities the full range of tools that it needs to learn and to thrive. After all, freedom of thought is a core American principle. Protecting the access to books protects that freedom. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And happy birthday to Mrs. DeAusis. All right, that is all that I had for citizens communication. We will move back up then to public and employee recognitions, and I think we do have an outgoing board or commission member recognition this evening. Ms. Hilbert.
Yes, sir. Council and staff would like to recognize Russell Dempsey. Mr. Dempsey served on the Victoria Sales Tax Development Corporation Board of Directors from 2020 to 2025. The city does appreciate your willingness to serve your community, sir, and presents you with this plaque in appreciation of your time and service.
You're going to say a few words if you like. No pressure.
Sorry, I didn't have anything prepared.
You have 3 minutes, though.
Okay. Keep it under. I want to say thank you to the board for entrusting me with this position on the Sales Tax Development Corporation. I think in the last 5 years, we've made a lot of progress. Just looking through the projects as I pass through them every day really gives me a lot of pride. When I was new to town about 7 years ago, I was really impressed. It was so funny. People were like, "There's nothing to do here." At times would be the accusation. I was like, "What are you talking about? This city has one of everything at least, and it has the most incredible bones when it comes to economic development. The infrastructure here, from ports to rails to major highways, it does not happen and occur in many places." And so I've been thrilled to take part of the planning of that and implementation of plans. Really appreciate all our committee members. I've really enjoyed getting to know all you guys. And I just hope that it's been able to have a lot of impact on my new community. So I appreciate you guys and thank you for the opportunity.
No, thank you for your time on the sales tax board. You did a great job, and we will miss you. So thank you. We appreciate it. All right. With that, then, we will move into section C, items with public hearings, and we'll begin with item C1.
Item C1 is an ordinance amending Chapter 21, the Unified Development Ordinance of the City of Victoria Code of Ordinances, and this item is on first reading.
Good evening, Ms. Fulgham.
Good evening. So I apologize. This is going to be a bit dry. As you know, most ordinance amendments are. The majority of the ordinance amendments are, there's a lot of cleanup, a lot of clarifying language, but I do have a short 24-slide presentation to go through. So just for transparency, these amendments have been posted since early December on our website, and our entire UDO can be accessed there if anybody wants to take time to go read through those later. So I'll just jump right into the modifications or the proposed amendments and go through one by one. The first is in our non-conforming section. So we did with the UDO created a site modification permit, which allows a property to do a kind of a lesser site plan whenever they're only proposing 30% or less changes to the site. But of course, I always have folks that want to push the limits. And so we've had some folks try to do a 30% big amendment and then come in just a few months later and request another 30%, which then of course amounts to 60% changes to the overall site, which really is not the intent of the site modification permit. It's to do these, smaller modifications with easing the burden because of the scale. So when you're doing a large scale renovation or change, then it needs to be a full site plan. So we've limited that. We're proposing to limit those to once every 2 years. The second part of this section is a variation that I'm allowed to grant as Director of Development Services. Throughout the ordinance, we have always limited that to 15% or 10%, but for whatever reason in the non-conforming section, it was written as 15%, and that's just kind of a conflict, so reducing that down to 10%. It's kind of along the same vein. Billboards is another area where we're continually seeing applicants try and kind of push the limits and the intent of the limit. And the intent of non-conforming billboards is eventually non-conforming billboards be removed and go away, especially with a lot of the digital billboards. The cost to revamp them basically means new billboards are being erected, and so then you have a whole new lifespan of a billboard. And so we had some applicants trying to phase out billboard replacements or repairs that really were not phases because they were dependent upon each other. Phase one wouldn't be complete until phase two was completed, and that's not really a phase project. Phases should be wholly independent of each other. So we are adding in a 5-year period where all alterations over a 5-year period that exceed 50% of the current value means that a billboard shall be removed as it's the end of its useful life. What really prompted all of this cleanup and all of these ordinance changes is the adoption of the new ICC codes. Currently, we're on the 2021 version. So we will be adopting the 2024 version of the International Building Code, the International Mechanical Code, the Plumbing Code, Fuel Gas Code, and Energy Conservation Code. And I did not include every single red line in this division because they're very highly technical and I couldn't explain them. But if anybody did read through and does have any questions, we do have, of course, our newly minted building official, Eli Briseño, here, and he'd be happy to delve into any of those charts and that technical language. And if you are wondering if you feel like there's some missing on these divisions, we are not making changes or adopting the 2024 International Residential Code or existing building code or property maintenance code. That will be coming at a later date because quite frankly, there's a lot of changes to the International Residential Code that we really want our Board of Adjustment and Appeals to get a good handle on before we propose any amendments to y'all. And the Board of Adjustment and Appeals did hold at least a minimum of 2 workshops for each of these books or each of these codes. And then, of course, held a meeting where they recommended unanimously to adopt all of the changes that are in this division. The next is a small change to our land use table regarding in-home childcare. So the state has made tweaks to their in-home childcare license rules. And so because of their permit changes, we are explicitly stating that in-home childcare centers should comply with in-home business regulations, which have limitations that you can't use accessory structures. You can only have one small sign. You need to keep a home business where the primary use is the home and it looks like a home. And so we are adding that caveat that child care facilities must comply within the in-home business rules as well. So this is straight cleanup. If you remember, we had a lot of different development regulations throughout the city code. And one of those is an entire chapter on manufactured homes that we rolled in to Chapter 21, the Unified Development Ordinance, but we did not clean up the references. And so Chapter 12 no longer exists. It's now Division 17. And then if you have been following the state law changes, there was some state law changes regarding food truck inspections. And so the next section just really makes us comply with state law and as far as the health inspection and fire department permits that are no longer required. Now, the last one, 14, it should be very self-explanatory of intent, but we always get a lot of pushback. It does, of course, say that food truck sites shall only operate on concrete and asphalt. And then, of course, in our right-of-way section, it requires the driveways be paved. But the portion of land between the right-of-way and the food truck, we're also saying ingress and egress, that portion, that what you would call a drive aisle or a full driveway, that also should be paved. This is to make original town site historic district development a little easier and to reduce variances or what's perceived as variances. So in our we have a planned shopping center regulation that allows us to recommend to Planning Commission a reduced setback or other bulk standards to fit within a specific type of development. And so we're basically just copied that language over for the original town site historic district, knowing that there are different blocks that need different treatments. So for example, in the very dense area that is our fire district, no setbacks really make sense. But when you extend out to the edges of the original town sign district that are more residential, and let's say you have an established building line of 20 feet or so, then that setback would make more sense in that area. And so this allows staff to make that recommendation directly to Planning Commission of what those setbacks should be based off of the character of the area within the original town site, without having to have one established 20-foot setback, which is what it currently, for the most part, is, and then variances. We can reduce those based off of the character with Planning Commission approval. So this next section really saved us after Hurricane Harvey, when all the fuel canopy pumps, all the fuel canopies fell down. We were able to just issue permits to let them stand back up because we have this reduction where they can be located within the 12 feet of the property line. But there's a lot more than just the canopies that come up, a lot of order boards and pay stations. So we expanded that language to be very clear that we mean all of those incidental sort of structures. So we also have created the established building line for residential neighborhoods, which basically in areas that long didn't have setbacks and have an established building line, you cannot build a new structure that deviates greatly from that established building line. So this is just clarifying that language so that our permit text struggled a lot with the language. So we're hoping it means the same thing, and we just cleaned it up and wordsmithed it so that they felt like it was something that they understood. On-site visibility, the intent has always been curb line, not property line, because in some instances you can have a really large undeveloped right-of-way, so your property line can be set back 10 or 15 feet, and site visibility is intended so that cars coming up to intersections can see in all directions, and so that should have been curb line when we wrote the ordinance. This has been deleted for access management. It's driveway separation because it's duplicated in a different section of the ordinance, so we didn't need it in two places. On landscaping, we have run into a few instances where property owners are choosing to completely remove all of their landscaping and without finding old site plans, and sometimes it's just been very difficult to tell people you really can't do that when their original site plan is from the 80s or the 90s, and it wasn't very explicit that you could not do that. So we're making it very clear that removal or major revisions of 30% or more of your landscaping, you have to resubmit a new site plan. You can't just tear out all of your landscaping. And then the other part is the xeriscape principles. So we realized that we had a practice in our office that was never actually codified, but has been inherited from past directors over and over, and that is and I'll actually skip ahead, when a applicant is requesting xeriscape, we have always said you need to hire a landscape architect to prepare a xeriscape plan. So we are codifying that, and then we're also being clear that in the street yard, you can only limit your non-live vegetative materials to 25%, because a famous example would be the Walgreens at Navarro and Airline. Of their entire landscaping is rock. I believe at one point there might have been plants spaced in there, but that's not the intent. The intent of landscaping is to beautify our street corridors, and so limiting that non-live vegetative material to 25% just in the street yard, and then actually codifying our practice of requiring a registered landscape architect to prepare xeriscape plans are for these two sections. Fences and screening, of course, it's in the screening fences section of the title, so we just clarified that this is about screening because there's a section in the overall ordinance that says titles don't actually mean, aren't part of the code. So again, just a lot of this is very nitty-gritty cleanup things because of pushback in the past. Again, on fences and screening, the intent is opaque fences shall not be higher than 3 feet. As you can know, we do have a lot of wrought iron fences around town and fences that you can see through that are placed within the front building setback. It's more about visibility, and so making it clear that opaque fences is the intent for that regulation. And then this fences are constructed of plywood, metal panels, corrugated steel sheets are prohibited. That ordinance was first created in the 80s. And mesh was not something that was used then, but we are seeing a lot of requests for mesh, and it really fits in that same, it's not a permanent type of fencing material, so we're adding that to the prohibition. The intent of the UDO on this next section is that no new dumpsters shall be set outside of dumpster enclosures, and so that's when we had, no provider account. But if you had an account and you were just requesting a new service, then Waste Management was arguing, well, it's a new service, it's not a new account, and they would set the dumpsters without a dumpster enclosure. The intent is new dumpsters shall not be set without an enclosure to prevent windblown trash from dirtying up Victoria, as well as the aesthetics of dumpsters. Shielding and cutoff standards for lighting. The LED lights are very bright, and we have been getting a lot of complaints when customers are upgrading their lights that they've had forever, but just because of how much brighter LED is, we added the sentence that lights should be directed away from residential uses, because it's always the residential neighbors calling code enforcement to complain about the commercial neighbors nearby. This is also a consistency. Again, the site modification permit is a 30% trigger. And so you would have to plat if you were adding 25%, but you don't have to do a site modification unless you're doing 30%. So we changed that to up that to 30%. So just make it real consistent. Those 10% numbers, 30% numbers, make it consistent throughout, and it's much easier administration for our staff. So we've long required 6 sets of approved site plans. Currently, one of the departments that receives an approved site plan no longer wants their copy, so we decided to make this more flexible in the ordinance that we can require up to 6 sets, and the number of site plans required at any given time is determined at the time of approval. So right now, we're only requesting 5 sets, but if administration changes and all departments want their 6 sets again, and it's still in the ordinance. One of maybe the biggest oops we did when we created the ordinance or redid the Unified Development Ordinance is not being explicitly clear about the Board of Adjustments and Appeals role. So it didn't go away. It's in Chapter 2 of the ordinance, which establishes all boards and commissions for the city. So their role and the Planning Commission's role is very clearly outlined in Chapter 2. But under the relief procedures of the UDO, we just copied over the old language from Chapter 21, our old Chapter 21, that all variances go to the Planning Commission. But the Planning Commission has never considered variances to building codes. That's always been the role of the Board of Adjustment and Appeals. And so this clarifies that and says that anything in Division 3, which is the whole purview, everything that used to be in Chapter 5, our building chapter, continues to go, will go to the Board of Adjustment and Appeals, and the rest of the UDO goes to the Planning Commission for variance request and relief. And of course, ultimately everything comes to City Council. So this is just a continuation of where we explicitly state that. Again, this part's, and we're nearing the end and the definitions. Chapter 14, Article 3 references to the new laws with food truck parks. Commercial amusement outdoor, it seems like it's self-explanatory that an outdoor music venue would be commercial amusement. But again, we had pushback on that, so we're being very clear. Outdoor music venues fits into the category of commercial amusement outdoor definition. And then Jesus also asked me to kind of cover what some of the UDO changes and how they relate to the Verdunity study. I apologize for missing the workshop meeting. It was at a busy time, but
Before we get to that though, Julie, I mean, any questions on any of those proposed changes?
I have a real picky question or
Okay.
comment, and I apologize that I didn't catch it and bring it up before, but in 21-148, which is dealing with properties downtown, there's a problem with the grammar. And so if you could just look at that later. Specifically, the word such doesn't fit. And we don't really need to discuss it. If you could just make a note of that. And
I can change it to these requirements, maybe reduced.
yeah, I
That would
think
fit.
something like that. It bothered me when I saw it and I couldn't get past it.
We probably need to go back and change it in the planned shopping center too, because I think I just copied and pasted it. So I'll look at both of those. And change
Even
those
better.
between second and third.
Any other questions? I know some of these are very technical revisions, and
I
we
apologize. It's
No,
really
no,
dry.
Very
Right.
exciting stuff.
we knew we were going to have to do this when we adopted the new ordinance, well, the new code originally. So
It's-
now
it's
we've had
much-
some time with them and kind of figure out, okay, where are the hiccups in there? And so
For a
this-
long time, we didn't really bring these types of changes, but it is so much easier for the staff member that is administering the ordinance to be like very clear, like, no, this is what we mean, instead of having kind of the constant back and forth with some applicants.
I have one question.
Sure.
On a lot of these changes, like the childcare facilities and things like that, is there a time period allotted for, say there's a childcare facility that maybe falls within a residential that's not being used in that residential
There
capacity?
should not be because of the previous licensing laws.
Okay. So with any of these, are there timelines?
If they were currently operating in an accessory structure, and then they would, unless they opened in the last like month or two, they would be illegal.
Okay. And then so like,
Is part of your question also asking you
The other
about
things.
grandfathering?
Yeah, it would be legally
not really grandfathering. I'm not really asking about grandfathering. I'm just asking what sort of time allotment. So you gave the example of Walgreens. If we make these changes to the landscaping and they're notified that these changes have been made,
So
what's the process for that?
if they were originally approved with that type of xeriscaping, until they make a change that triggers some other subsequent permit, that's their grandfather, or what we call legally non-conforming. So they actually wouldn't have to. It's really whenever permits and applications and
happens.
things, change happens
Okay.
that triggers something, and then they have to come into compliance.
Okay, thanks.
And so with the lighting, for example, you know, if somebody already installed, you know, lighting, we can't necessarily go back and have them change the light.
Yeah. There's no
The light
retroactive
fixtures, right.
application. Yeah.
Yeah, and then some of those, we also have like, in the lighting, there's some double dipping. We actually do have some rules in the building code, in the actual National Electrical or IRC or the actual building code. But the building code is not very easily found for just the general population or understood or
Or
looked at.
understood,
And so some of the changes that we are putting in, some of our rules in the UDO are duplications because it's easier for the public to understand and see and read.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. Any other questions, comments? Okay. And then I think you had a few more things to share with us.
On the validity study and, you know, basically the fiscal cost, the future fiscal costs of development. One thing that we have, I think, really helped with the UDO, I mean, there was a lot of variety that was allowed under old ordinance, but with UDO, our land use chart really expanded or made it very clear all the different types of housing units that are allowed in Victoria. Especially the allowance of our accessory dwelling units and how robust or how relaxed those rules are in compared to a lot of cities that have a traditional zoning ordinance. We basically allow them by right anywhere as long as there's some performance standards that are met. And so that's, of course, very helpful in increasing the density that helps with the overall cost. One comment I have on here, the 50-foot lot width minimum. We continue to hear from developers a request for a 40-foot lot width minimum, and I continue to have heartburn over recommending that reduction, mainly because a 40-foot lot can really overwhelm a neighborhood. Think of a neighborhood like Tangerine or something where there's really not enough parking provided on site, and so when you have double cars every night clogging up the street, you know, it's public safety, just general, you know, ambience of the neighborhood, and that really starts to change. So if we were to really look at a 40-foot lot, we would want to have some trade-offs, such as a deeper lot that also allow a requirement of more parking, and then is it really, are you really getting the trade-off? Because the reason the request for the 40-foot lot continues is the cost of a street and the cost of development. And so you start adding a deeper lot or additional off-street parking, you're adding those costs back. So that's something to think about because there continues to be a huge push nationally for the skinnier lots. The other, I guess, benefit to Victoria, and this is something that we didn't change with our UDO, it's just always been there, is that we do not have any floor area ratio regulations. And what those regulations are is, let's say you have a 5,000 square foot lot. A lot of single family residential zoning districts in other cities will say that you can only develop 40 to 50% of that lot. So you have a 5,000 square foot lot, but you can only have 2,500 square feet of structure. And that includes driveways, patios, home, pools. All development is usually capped at 40 or 50% in single-family residential neighborhoods. It's kind of a national standard on floor area ratio rules, and like I said, we've never had that. Now it comes into play with drainage, but in the redundancy study, if you look at some of our neighborhoods that you would think aren't performing like he would suggest that they should perform, like Lake Forest is a good example of large lots. But there's large lots with large improvements, large homes, large paving areas, large pools, large accessory buildings. And of course, that all gets taxed. And so some of those large lot neighborhoods actually perform a little better here. And the big reason is we do not have Florida area ratio regulations. Now, of course, a big reason cities adopt Florida area ratio regulations is kind of a lazy way to enforce drainage requirements, because if you can't develop half the lot with impervious coverage, you don't have to worry so much about drainage. So it really comes into play when we're talking about, you know, the drainage fee and not having floor area ratio regulations. You know, it's because we're having to take account all of that drainage. And then the last kind of comment I had about the verdundity study and pushing growth and thinking about the cost of development over time is the Thurfer Master Plan and infrastructure and all infrastructure. That is really probably the biggest dictator of where growth happens, because developers, of course, are always looking at where will the city participate to, you know, drive these development costs down. And so if we want to, you know, really look at incentivizing or, you know, growing a certain area or infill development or whatnot, then it's always, you know, infrastructure can play a really big role in kind of pushing development to a certain direction, right, area. So those are some thoughts I had on the verdundity study. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I apologize for missing the workshop where it was all covered.
No worries. Any questions?
Just a comment that the floor area ratio explanation that you gave is interesting. It occurs to me as we look at drainage and the, what are they called, the residential equivalent units. You wouldn't use a business for a comparison if you're basically trying to get at that a residence usually has a lot of grass and plants and things that absorb the water. And so that is an interesting concept as we deal with our drainage concerns. I kind of like that concept and understand it, because if we allow smaller lots and then have residences cover the majority of the lot, now we have impervious cover, which is what we're trying to compensate for. Does that make sense?
And our drainage study and all of the drainage plans, and I wish Ken was here because he can explain it so much better, but a lot of those have assumptions for residential and actually assume that 40%. But of course, you know, we look at the whole aggregate and we don't actually regulate that on a building permit by building permit by building permit. And so there are definitely a lot of outliers, and especially with how generous we are on our accessory dwelling unit regulations. And if those continue to be more popular, then we will see more coverage than the 40% that's assumed in all of our drainage master plans and whatnot.
All right, thank you very much. With that then, I will open up the public hearing on item C1, which is on first reading. If there's anyone who wishes to address council on this matter, please come forward at this time. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and entertain any motions with respect to item C1.
I move we adopt C1.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this matter? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, C1 is approved on first reading. So we'll move on then to item C2.
Item C2 is an ordinance approving an amendment to the fiscal year 2025-26 budget in the amount of $1,973,416.45 for the dispatch pay program, request for information software, additional bond redemption program, and future CIP projects.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight's item will incorporate some projects we had presented to y'all in December. First off, in our general fund, we have the dispatch pay program, which will incorporate a new step pay structure and department structure. Implementing that for the remainder of this fiscal year comes at a cost of $157,000. And then going into next year's budget, it'll be a total annual cost of $209,371. In addition, we have an amount for a new RFI software totaling $16,388 for fiscal '26. And I'll let April discuss that.
Good evening. So The RFI software we have currently is not very efficient for us to use, so implementing new software would enable the city to efficiently manage and provide more consistent responses to all our public information requests, fulfilling the requirements of the actual Public Information Act. So the new software would have things like redaction abilities within the software built in, workflow automations, better tracking and reporting, automated responses and updates to the requesters, so it's more efficient on their side as well. Automated reminders. Currently, I spend part of my day every day going through all the public information requests to see which ones are outstanding, which ones are coming close, sending reminders, making sure the departments are closing their information request out in the current software we have, just because it does not have those capabilities. So it'll be more efficient time-wise for my department, for myself and Sandra. There's also message templates so that we, again, would have consistent messaging across the board for all information requests rather than each department kind of sending the request. Also, will house all the information that's sent. So if we send it through the system, then if somebody else requests that same exact information, it's right there again. We don't have to go digging for it. Or if somebody says, hey, I didn't get that email, maybe it got caught in their filters or something, we can go right there and grab it and not have to go look for it again and dig it out. Or maybe the person who emailed it to them isn't here that week because they're on vacation. It's just right there in the system. We can find it consistently and easily. And there's also a way for us to have a separate workflow for the police department's requests. The majority of the requests we get are for police records every day. So currently those all come to my office and we have to turn around and assign them to the police department. But with this software, we can actually create a separate workflow and form. So if somebody's specifically requesting information from the police department only, they could go to that, would go straight to them and be assigned to them without no one from my office having to go in behind it and figure out who it's going to assign it to them, so that would, the majority of the requests would go straight to them. It's more efficient for them as well as for us and the requesters.
And I'll add to that, Council. The software we currently use for requests for information responses is the same software we use for our agenda package creation. That software is actually intended for agendas creation, not for RFIs. We've manipulated it to make it work well enough for us. But we feel like with this new software that's specifically designed for this process will be a lot more efficient, like April said, and a lot more responsive to the community and to the public with the requests that are made to us.
One of the things that I think is important for historical context that I mentioned to the mayor yesterday,
Sometime, yeah.
So whenever we talk, but part of it, there's been an evolution just in the last 6 years of how we treat requests for information. Part of one of the changes that I implemented shortly after arriving was shifting the request for information process away from the city attorney's office and to the city secretary's office to have more of a centralized process. It's more common to have these processes under the city secretary's office. And obviously she was always involved to some extent, but now over the last few years, it's been more of a primary role on her part. And so having the software is helping to continue moving in the direction of further centralizing this process for consistency's sake across our entire organization.
Questions about that? Anyone? No, I think, obviously, from my standpoint, we need to do that timely, we need to do that efficiently, and we need to be uniform, so that different responses for same information get the same information and are, put out the same way. So I view it as a step in the right direction, definitely, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I just note that both of these items do represent recurring items that would have to be included in future budgets. So for fiscal '27, that would be about $224,000 of an ongoing commitment to continue funding these two items. And the last item is in our construction fund. We had talked about our redemption program and utilizing some excess funds on some projects that had closed out the beginning of this fiscal year. We had proposed using an additional $700,000 to add to our bond redemption program, bringing that total to $1.3 million. And then also using the remainder of those excess funds, just allocating them towards future CIP projects that'll be determined as the year goes on. So do you have any questions?
All right, any questions? No? All right, thank you for the information. So then with that, I will open up the public hearing on item C2, which are these budget amendments. If there's anyone wishing to speak to council on this matter, please come forward. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion with respect to this item.
Motion to approve item C2?
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And C2 passes. All right, that moves us on then to our consent agenda. Ms. Hilbert.
Yes, sir. Item D1 is the adoption of minutes of special work session held on December 12th, 2025, and the regular meeting held on December 16th, 2025. Item D2 is a resolution approving an agreement to lease 20 Club Car Tempo 2 lithium golf carts through Club Car LLC with a service plan through Club Car and Visage FT Plus, screenless fleet management tracking for Riverside Golf Course in amount not to exceed $130,564.80. Item D3 is a resolution approving the amendment to the services agreement with DataVox Incorporated for equipment and services at the Public Safety Headquarters in an additional amount of $10,468.44 for a total amount not to exceed $418,640.91.
Thank you, Ms. Hilbert. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Let's move to approve the consent agenda as read. Second?
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, consent agenda passes. So we move to action items, and we'll begin with item E1.
Item E1 is consideration and possible action on the confirmation of the city manager appointments to the Firefighters Civil Service Commission and the respective staggered terms.
All right, so good afternoon or good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a brief update for you this evening on the process to establish a Civil Service Commission, and obviously I have my appointees that I'm presenting to you for confirmation. Just really briefly, just to recap, these are the same slides that I showed in November, but I just think it's appropriate since it's a new thing to just recap it as often as possible. And so as a refresher, the Civil Service proposition, as you know, passed in November, and that'll require us to follow a consistent set of rules for hiring, promotions, pay, and disciplinary matters within our fire department. I underlined pay because we did also have the proposition on collective bargaining pass, and so the collective bargaining process is will be more involved in the pay element of it, but certainly the Civil Service Commission will continue to focus on the hiring, promotion, and disciplinary aspect of it. The Civil Service law requires us to establish a three-member Civil Service Commission to oversee these rules. One of the biggest changes that comes with this is that it shifts the authority over personnel matters from management and the chief to the commission. We already, for example, have promotional processes that take place. We already have requirements for hiring. We already have processes for disciplinary action and appeals process. But up until this point, those rules and those processes have been designed and put into place by the fire chief. And so that now takes that away from the fire chief and puts it solely on the Civil Service Commission to adhere to the Chapter 143 rules. And as we discussed, per HB 2713, it is impossible to repeal civil service in a community of our size. So next steps, after we canvassed the election results in mid-November, we had 60 days to establish a Civil Service Commission, and so that puts us at mid-January, which brings us to tonight. Again, Civil Service and the Commission will develop policies and the rules. We plan to do that in coordination with our outside legal counsel, Frank Garza, which you met a few months ago. And all in all, these new civil service rules need to be in place within 30 days of the new fiscal year, which is the end of October. But the way that I'm choosing to view it is beginning by October 1st so that it aligns with our fiscal year. Some of the duties of the Civil Service Commission, on the technical side of it, they'll have to elect the chairman and vice chairman. They'll have to appoint a civil service director, which is usually the HR director. This individual is the person that would basically professionally staff the board, ensure that the meetings are taking place, but more importantly, ensure that all of the rules that are adopted by the Civil Service Commission are implemented accordingly. Some of those rules will detail causes for removal or suspension of firefighters, set physical and mental requirements, call for exams for applicants and promotions, and approve hiring and promotional list, as well as consider disciplinary appeals. One of the things that I want to reemphasize as part of this slide is that in the process of interviewing individuals interested for the Civil Service Commission, it became more obvious to me where the elements of confusion are as it relates to the role of the board. And so I want to pause for a moment to clarify that, after we get through the initial establishment of the rules, which we think will take 4 to 6 months, and I'll get to that a little bit later, the ongoing business of the Civil Service Commission will really focus more on the last 2 bullet points on this slide. The recurring business of the Civil Service Commission will solely focus on approving those hiring and promotional lists. So the frequency of their meetings will depend on how often we have new lists to approve. And the purpose of them approving them is for them to serve as that checks and balance of accountability to help all of us ensure that those lists were developed in accordance with the rules that they established. And then on the consideration of disciplinary appeals, those of course come every so often. In the 6.5 years that I've been here, I think I've only had 3 or 4 appeals from the fire department come to my office, just to give you a sense of how frequent these appeals might come up. And nobody knows, if the establishment of civil service will lead to less or more disciplinary appeals. But that will become sort of some of the ongoing responsibilities of the board. And because of that, I was very intentional a few months ago in providing you a little bit of preferred qualifications, because I do think that in this particular instance, because we are talking about establishing the rules for the first time, I do think it necessitated individuals with ideally with experience in policymaking, implementation, legal or labor relations, or HR, or just executive management experience. And I was very clear about these preferred qualifications in November, and that certainly was top of mind throughout the process. In November, I shared that we had opened a application period that originally was intended to be closed in mid-December, but quite frankly, I just did not get enough applicants. And so we extended that through the end of the year and extended it through December 31st. In that time period, we received 12 eligible applicants. I shared with you all via email that we actually received 18. 4 were ineligible because of state rules that require individuals to live inside city limits. So 4 individuals do not live inside city limits. And then I personally chose to make 2 individuals ineligible because of their close relationship with an active firefighter, which I feel is a huge conflict of interest. And of course, here this evening, we're here to make my recommendations on my appointees. And so they're all here this evening. They're not ready to give speeches, but I do want to acknowledge their presence in the room. But first, I want to start with Mr. Lee Keeling. He's the individual that I have appointed to and seek confirmation for the 3-year term. Many of you know Lee. He's an attorney with Walker, Keeling, and Hatley. How do I say that? Hatley, yes, got it right. Has over 35 years practicing law, some of which focuses mostly on business and commercial law, but as part of that, he actually does delve into advising employers on employment matters. And one of the things that stood out to me in my conversation with him was his role on the grievance committee with the state bar. And so he has some very relatable experience as it relates to just hearing cases come or appeals coming to a board and things of that sort. And so that really stood out. But more importantly, one of the things that stood out once I assessed the entire applicant pool was how important I ended up realizing previous experience as an appointee, just how important that could be in this process. And so he has served with the Victoria Sales Tax Development Corporation as a city appointee from 2015 to 2020, and he served on the Parks Commission from 2017 to 2023. Some of you may remember that he was actually involved with revamping the Parks Commission and re-establishing the bylaws and and just everything involved with the Parks Commission. So when I mentioned having experience in policy development, he certainly fits that mold, not only in his professional career, but in his previous, you got a message on Teams, but in his previous experience as an appointee as well. Second, I'd like to appoint and seek for your confirmation for Mr. Decatur Joseph, who I'm wanting to place in the 2-year term slot. Many of you know him as well. He's a chartered financial consultant with over 30 years serving our community. As part of his financial consulting career, he manages benefits, including group health, life, and retirement plans, and also manages retirement plans and insurance plans. And I just felt that his professional experience would be very instrumental to the work of the Civil Service Commission. He also has extensive experience, having served as a city appointee. He served on the Sales Tax Development Corporation from 2014 to 2020, and more recently served on the Charter Review Committee in 2021, which, for those that aren't familiar, the Charter Review Committee process is a very meticulous, detail-centric process. And so if we wanted somebody with a proven track record of being meticulous and very detailed in their review of complicated subject matters, Mr. Decatur Joseph certainly fits the mold. And then lastly, I'm seeking the confirmation of Mr. Casey Cullen for the 1-year time slot. He's an attorney with Cullen & Home and has over 15 years practicing law. While he mainly focuses on civil law, he also represents cities, counties, and other government entities on employment matters. And so he actually has very relevant experience as it relates to just dealing with government employee employment matters, and specifically first responders, actually. And so very practical and appropriate experience. He also has experience at serving as an appointee of the city, currently serving on the Victoria Sales Tax Development Corporation since 2021. And so lastly, assuming you confirm the 3 appointees, our next order of business would be to schedule the bi-monthly meetings, which we mean meeting twice a month. And as I alluded to earlier, formally, they'd have to elect a chairman, designate a civil service director, which would be our HR director, and then the intent is just get right to work immediately. And again, our outside legal counsel, Frank Garza, suggests it might take 4 to 6 months to set it all up. And then finally, I want to end my presentation with a reminder that the Civil Service Commission does not play a role in collective bargaining. And through my conversations with applicants, I learned that that was another confusing element, that a lot of people, some people believe that the Civil Service Commission was actually going to be doing some of the collective bargaining for us. And so I just want to be very clear that the Civil Service Commission has nothing to do with collective bargaining, and that is a whole other process that we intend to hopefully start at some point in March or April of this year. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or address any concerns you might have about the 3 appointees that I'm seeking confirmation on.
So I assume since they're all here, they're willing to be appointed? We're not just throwing them in there?
Yeah, yes.
Okay,
yes,
okay. We
yes.
at least have that commitment.
Yes.
Yes.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
Who all was involved in the selection process?
Just
the
me.
Application? Just you? Also, the meetings that this commission has, do they have to be in person, or can they be via Zoom or Teams? And are they evaluated or viewed, or do they have an audience in any shape, form, or fashion?
Sure, so that's a good question. So the Civil Service Commission meetings are public meetings, and so they will be treated like every other board or commission with an agenda that's posted. You know, I forget how to describe the rules now around how in advance to post it, but I'm so used to just saying 72 hours in advance. But now I think it's three business days in advance, and those meetings are open to the public. I would not even open the door to try and create ways to have those meetings virtually. Our intent would be to have those meetings in person.
Yeah, well, and I don't believe that we could hold them virtually, just the same as we can't hold city council meetings virtually. We can invite people to speak to the council virtually, but we have to have council members present. That exception was during COVID when nobody could be together, and that has since been pulled back, and so they have to be there in person.
Any other questions? Okay.
I think, April, did you have a question?
Oh.
You mentioned that there were 12 other candidates. How many of those 12, outside of the 3 selected, met the criteria that you had established?
I think the best way I can answer that question is that the 3 appointees that I'm recommending for confirmation were the only appointees that had the combination of professional experience that I was looking for, as well as the track record of having previous experience as a city appointee, as well as being a very involved citizen in our community, having served on multiple nonprofit boards.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I am incredibly thankful and impressed by the applicants that you brought forth, and I appreciate that their willingness to serve if we so vote that way, but I do appreciate that. Very strong.
I'd like to echo what Dr. Young said. I couldn't quite get the words figured out, but I agree. I'm pleased with the process that you have initiated. I'm pleased with the criteria that you deemed were the important ones, and I'm very pleased and appreciative of everyone that applied, but certainly the ones that you have brought to us.
It's certainly a strong and qualified group, no doubt. And gentlemen, this will not be a fun job. There will be a lot of twists and turns to it, I'm sure, but thank you. Much appreciated, not only from us, but from the community. So thank you very much. With that then, are there any motions with respect to item E1 of the slate of city manager appointees?
I move that we confirm the city manager appointees to the Firefighters Civil Service Commission.
I'll second.
All right, I've got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And those 3 gentlemen are confirmed. So again, thank you very much. Much appreciated. And we'll look forward to seeing what you guys can put together. Thank you.
Great. We do have a short executive session.
Okay, so no city manager report, correct?
Correct.
All right, so then we will take a quick 10-minute break and at that point reconvene into executive session.
The City Council recessed for executive session on the 6th day of January 2026 at 6:12 p.m. Subject matter is as follows: Texas Government Code 551.087, 551.072, and 551.071.